He is back on the program from The Athletic and the MLB Network. Jayson Stark. Congratulations, Jayson.
Rich, thank you so much, my friend. How are you?
What does this mean, man? This is awesome. This is fantastic.
It is awesome. I was up in Cooperstown last week meeting with people from the Hall of Fame, and it almost feels like it's happening to someone else, but apparently it's happening to me. And it's a real out-of-body experience. I just can't tell you how excited I am to be part of such a distinguished group. I've taken great pains to make sure that people will understand I'm not comparing myself to Mariano Rivera or Roy Halladay or Edgar or Mike Messina. My achievements are much different than theirs, but we will be bonded forever by that weekend, and that's really cool.
You don't need to qualify it, Jayson. Seriously, like everybody understands you didn't throw a fastball, you didn't snap off a curve, or as Joe Torre told us yesterday, I was unaware, just flat out developed a cutter in a bullpen session with Mel Stottlemyre, as Mariano did back in the day. But you deserve it, man. I mean, I've read your stuff for some time. I'm pleased to say that we were colleagues at ESPN back in the day, and it's the greatest adult bar mitzvah party you're about to have. This is the greatest thing of all time, Jayson.
That's a really good way to describe it.
Absolutely.
My wife has used the same analogy.
Well, look, I mean, and Peter Gammons can be part of your candle lighting ceremony. It'll be fantastic, you know.
Yeah, you will. Exactly.
So let's get into the Hall of Fame class for the players' side of things. What do you think makes it so unique, obviously, than other than Rivera's selection as unanimous?
You know what? I thought all four players that we elected were great stories in their own right. Like Mariano, I understand that Willie Mays and Babe Ruth and Ken Griffey and probably a dozen other guys should have been unanimous before him. But one of the things I think this makes totally clear is that the gap between him and whoever you think is the second best closer of all time is so wide. It might be wider than at any other position in baseball or in sports. So it was impossible for anybody to find a reason not to vote for Mariano Rivera. And thank God we put an end to the dopiest tradition in sports. Mike Messina, I'm thrilled that he made it. I voted for a long time. He was the biggest drama of the day. Wasn't sure if he would get there. Made it by 7 votes. Edgar, I have voted for a decade. I wrote a book a decade ago on the most overrated and underrated players of all time. Edgar was my most underrated DH. I may have to revise that chapter. An incredible offensive force. And then there's the Roy Halladay story. All the joy mixed with all the sadness. I still don't know how to process that he's not going to be there next July.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, you spent many, many moon in Philadelphia. What do you think that's going to be like with Halladay and his family, and obviously the fact that he went down in a single pilot plane crash a couple of years ago, Jayson?
Well, it's going to be so emotional. You know, if you listen to his wife Brandy speak yesterday at the gathering of Hall of Famers, she's amazing and so eloquent and thoughtful and well-spoken and honest. And you know, I'm assuming it'll fall to her to speak that day. And I can't imagine there'll be a dry eye in the house because she's amazing. You know, he was really a special individual, and you can see that reflected in his family, and it'll be reflected on that day. It's just not fair that he won't be there. I've mentioned this before, but we've never really experienced this, any of us. It's been 83 years since there was any player who got elected on the first ballot and was not alive to enjoy it. Christy Mathewson, in the very first Hall of Fame election ever, is the only other one.
Yeah, I mean, my only recollection of all the Hall of Fames I've done with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, where the first ballot selection not there, it's happened twice. Reggie White and Junior Seau, Jayson,
yeah.
and it is really. It's really emotional, and it is a mixture of all the emotions of exhilaration and profound sadness, you know, and that is going to be part of your weekend, and obviously at the Hall of Fame. Another drama, though, involving a Philadelphia pitcher is Schilling. The case of Schilling not making it and having the numbers to do it, and so many out there thinking that his personal beliefs off of the baseball diamond is keeping him out of what should be only about baseball. Where do you stand on that subject, Jayson?
Yeah, I've voted for Curt every year he's been on the ballot, and I strongly believe that he should be in. As I've said a billion times, it's not the Hall of Twitter; it's the Hall of Fame. I don't think you can even argue with his baseball credentials, but I also don't think there's any doubt that it's social media that has hurt him. If you look back a couple of years, you will see that his vote total took one of the biggest and most shocking dips we've ever seen, and he never threw a pitch. You can't make 36 votes disappear unless it's got something to do with what you have done or said off the field. And this was the first year where I think we saw a sign that people are over that, and he's in perfect position now to get elected very possibly next year. He's the leading returning vote getter, and he's cleared 60%. He's got 3 elections to go. Over the last 30 years, every player who was in his possession, over 60%, at least 3 years left, has been elected by the writers. I have no doubt he'll be the next on that list.
Jayson Stark here on the Rich Eisen Show. If you could wave a wand and change something about the voting process, I mean, this is always something discussed in the NFL world and the pro football world. What would it be here for the voting process for you for the Hall of Fame, Jayson?
Well, I would love to see the rule of 10 change.
Explain what that means
to re-examine the requirement that you have to get 5% to stay on the ballot. It's been something that we've actually been kicking around on Twitter all day, because I tweeted earlier today that Lance Berkman, to me, is one of the worst one-and-dones we've ever had. The only players in history with as many hits as Lance Berkman and an OPS plus, which accounts for a player's home park and era, are Barry Bonds and Manny Ramirez, and we know why they're not getting in. The rule of 10 says you can only vote for 10, even if you think 12 should make it. I've been one of those guys the last few years, and I don't see that rule changing. I wish it would. I wish we could just vote yes or no. And then 5%, I think that if you don't get 5% in 2 consecutive elections, that should drop you off, because that way everybody would know when they went to vote, this particular player would be in danger of falling off if he doesn't get the 5%, and people could vote with that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, again, I keep making the comparison to football because that's the one that I've been intimately involved in for 15 years, where there's a group of individuals that has been designated to winnow the field down from semifinals to finalists, and then that is the group that's presented in front of an election group. And in terms of baseball, it just seems that there's a ton of people that aren't considered Hall of Famers for an absurdly long time, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're a Hall of Famer. I mean, and it's arbitrary as to, for instance, Harold Baines is a perfect example of that. I mean, we could have an argument about Harold Baines' worthiness compared to probably about 100 other players, to be very honest with you, Jayson. So I'm wondering what that's all about.
Well, that's true. And that, like, Harold Baines was voted in by one of the Veterans Committees, the Today's Game Era Committee, last month. And, I don't know how much of an effect he had on our election, but he clearly is going to have an effect on all future Veterans Committee elections, because there's so many players, as you just said, who are above the Harold Baines line. Just undeniable. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to Harold Baines, who had a great career. But I've always thought it's not an insult to say that somebody was not quite a Hall of Famer. I mean, barely a little more than 1% of all players who've ever played make it to the Hall of Fame. And so if you're among the best 2%, you're still great. You just might not be that great. And this is going to cause a reexamination of all kinds of players because of that. But, I think people have also made the same point regarding Edgar Martinez, right, who gets in on the 10th year. And I think two things are going on there. One is the rule of 10 was a big factor in his lower vote total. People weren't voting against him. Just the ballot was so clogged, he didn't make a lot of voters top 10. So that's been a big part of this. And then the other part is we've just got so much information now that's so more incisive than what we were using when he first came on the ballot. All we did then was count. Does the guy have 3,000 hits? Does he have 500 homers? Boom, he's a Hall of Famer. If he doesn't, boom, he's not.
Right.
Now we can see past that. And I think you're seeing voting really begin to change because of it.
Last couple minutes with Jayson Stark, the Athletic and MLB Network, and the winner of the Spink Award of this year's class in Cooperstown. What's going on with Harper and Machado, Jayson? I mean, it's almost February here. What's happening? What's the latest?
January 24th.
It's
and
crazy.
They still haven't signed. And I mean, the sense I get now is probably if you're going to do an over-under, I would say halftime of the Super Bowl, and I might still take the over. I think it could go past that.
Well, for baseball's sake, I'm hoping it does, because next week, I mean, we're all going to be and I'm not just saying we. I'm not talking about this show as the royal we. I'm literally, the whole media world is going to go to Atlanta. And, heaven forbid that Harper or Machado say on, like, Super Bowl Thursday, when Gronk says this might be his last game ever, decides to make a big announcement. And that's, the thing I want to, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, because I do want some actual information, and maybe we could fold the answer into the same one here, Jayson Stark. But there's got to be something baseball have. The NBA, everybody wants to sign quickly, and the first week of July is huge for the NBA. In the first week of March, everybody in the NFL signs quickly or within the first few days, and it's huge for the NFL. Baseball has none of that, and two of their biggest stars deciding where they're going to go, and it's just like one big mosh pit where we're all sitting and waiting around having no idea when the world's going to change.
Right, and I think it's a real problem for the sport because – one of the things that's made the NBA especially, but the NFL too, in recent years is they're such star-driven sports. And in baseball, when great players reach the market, they're not being celebrated. This is just agonizing. I wrote about it a week or so ago. When Barry Bonds signed with the Giants, whatever you think of Barry Bonds now, their attendance went up by over 1 million. That's what stars do. And that part of the discussion has really been lost here. This has been a big battle of analytics and agents trying to make history with their clients. And, there's just a lot of internal subplots that have pushed this into just an interminable marathon. And I don't think it's good for them. I don't think it's good for the sport. It's not even going to be that good for the teams that sign them because they've blown through the entire season ticket buying period and haven't done anything.
Well, A.J. Pollock is looking like he's going to hook up with the Dodgers, Jayson. Does that mean that they're out of the Harper game, or it doesn't matter? Or can the Phillies actually still get both, or the White Sox getting both? Or, you know what I mean? Like, where does it stand?
Phillies won't get both.
Right.
The Dodgers, I do believe that Bryce has waited around to see if the Dodgers could get creative. And this is a reflection. That's not going to happen, but I think we've known for a while it's not going to happen. Manny, I think that Bryce winds up falling to the Phillies because they're the one team still left at a price point that they're interested in, but just not the Giancarlo Stanton historic contract price point. Manny at least has options. He still has the Phillies. He still has the White Sox. I am totally convinced that there is a mystery team. And, I've tried everything I know, and a lot of us have, to figure out who that is. But there's traffic in that lane. Bryce, I don't sense a lot of traffic at the years and dollars that Scott Boras has been looking for. So just hang in there, man.
Yankees are out with LeMahieu and Tulowitzki, though, right, on Machado? Those 2 + 2 equals 4 there?
Ever say the Yankees are completely out because I do think Manny, if everything else were equal, would want to be there. I don't know what would happen if he came to them, he and Dan Lozano, and said, "This is where I want to be. I'll do it on your terms." It's probably too late. There's a good chance it's too late, but It's the Yankees. They've surprised us many times.
They
There's
have.
a lot of people have marched up to the podium trying on that Yankees shirt that you never thought would.
Well, you're going to see a lot of Yankees fans in Cooperstown when you look out on that beautiful meadow and delivering your speech, Jayson, which I look forward to seeing next summer. Congrats again. I love our chats. Let's do it again soon.
Rich, that would be great. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
You bet. That's Jayson Stark at JasonST.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.